Right, it's 1 o'clock. We'll get started with today's strategic planning. Right, membership of the committee. I noticed that we were missing so far. Councillor Thompson. Have you heard out from him, Bill? No. We'll make a start anyway. Right, item 2 minutes of the previous meeting. We okay passing them as a true record? Thank you. Item 3, declaration of interest in lobbying. Bill.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I have in the past received several emails regarding the removal of trees as part of the greater scheme to which this refers. Although I think that's largely been addressed by the removal of the former Area A from the scheme. I've done no more than acknowledge individual emails.
Yeah. Andrew.
Thanks, Chair. To be perfectly honest, I'm not sure whether I've received anything about this specific. I could stand corrected, but I don't think I have.
Right. Well, I'm just going to cover myself with over the last few years. Various application numbers, because they have changed a little bit, but yeah. Councillor Crook.
None, Chair.
Councillor Patterson.
Yes, I've had nothing in the other than previous. Sorry, I don't know where my voice has gone. Anything other than previous years, nothing recently.
Mohan.
Yeah, same like Carol. You know, when about a few years back, we usually have some email.
And
not on this application.
I haven't had out of the last couple of weeks, but I have over the last few years. Right, I think that covers that. For admission of the public, we're on YouTube. Item 5, any public questions? Item 6, any deputations or petitions? Right, on to today's planning application, which... Yeah.
Your attention to page 9 of the documents, which is a headlined agenda item 7, and gives a list of legislation, etc., that's been taken into consideration. It does not include the current Environment Act, which I believe is 2021, which introduces duties relating to biodiversity and similar issues. I'm wondering if we could update this sheet for future committees. I think we do need to take account of the current legislation. Thank you.
David.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Yes, we will have a review of that. Councillor Armour, if there's anything that has been missed off, we will ensure that it's on there, particularly in respect of things like climate change and environment bills. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, David. Right, now I'll say this. I know that parking's bad round here, and it is. So I noticed that Mark's still not here. If it does arrive before we do get to vote, obviously, depending on where we are, I will let him vote, because I don't want him trailing out way from Birkinshaw and for it to be a complete waste of time. And just when you say that, they walk through the door. Right, we'll crack on then. Richard.
Good afternoon, committee. I'm Richard Gilbert, Senior Planning Officer in Development Management and Case Officer for item 8 on the agenda this afternoon. There's significant history to this application, and therefore I apologise in advance for the lengthy presentation, though it will be of benefit, I promise. The application in front of members today is 2021-92734, which is for Phase 5 of the Huddersfield to Halifax A629 improvement scheme, which is allocated as strategic transport as a strategic transport intervention within the Kirklees local plan and referenced as TS4. Though members are reminded that financial matters are not a material planning consideration, officers can inform the committee that the A629 programme is a regional project funded through the West Yorkshire Plus Transport Fund at an identified cost of £120 million. It therefore represents the largest individual scheme within the Transport Fund, which is backed by £1 billion of investment from central government as a part of the West Yorkshire City deal. This level of investment is a sign of confidence in Calderdale and Kirklees Council's ability to deliver a project of this scale. You will see on the slide that the project is split into phases. For brevity, only the highway capacity projects are discussed in detail. These are phases 1A, 1B and 5. Phases 2, 3 and 4 are sustainable travel or town centre improvements that were or are part of the wider corridor improvement programme. Phase 1A and 1B are the yellow and green sections between Shore Hill, just south of Halifax Town Centre, to the north of Ainley Top roundabout, whilst Phase 5 extends from the southern side of Ainley Top down along Halifax Road towards Huddersfield. Phase 1A is now complete and Phase 1B is amidst construction. The original set of interventions within Phase 5 are across 4 locations labelled as Areas A, B, C and D. Area A was proposed to upgrade the Blacker Road, Edgerton Grove Road junction within the Edgerton Road and Greenhead Park conservation areas. Meanwhile, Area B is located across the East Street Birkby Road junction, north of the Edgerton Conservation Area and adjacent the Cavalry Arms Public House. Area C is north of Area B within a place known as Prince Royd, which stretches up to Birchincliffe Road and Burn Road junction. Lastly, Area D extends from the Yew Tree Road junction up to the southern side of the Ainley Top roundabout. The works proposed in Area A would have resulted in the loss of 87 trees, including 15 Category A specimens, as well as the realignment of a significant number of stone boundary walls to facilitate the development. The public response to Area A was unanimous in its disapproval for this element of the programme, with 293 representations received by Kirklees Planning Department, the majority of which objected to Area A coming forward. Following strong public opinion being provided, the application was put on hold until July 2023, when a revised scheme was received by the local planning authority, of which the main amendment included the removal of Area A, but the retention of Areas B, C and D. By comparison, since July 2023, and following 2 further rounds of public consultation, 27 representations have been received on the remaining elements of the scheme. For context, this represents a tenth of the comments received prior to Area A being removed. This slide presents the site layout for Area B. The highway improvement works in this location consist of realignment of the junction from its current offset between East Street and Birkby Road. Birkby Road is to be widened to provide 2 dedicated turn lanes to improve the junction's efficiency. To enable the junction realignment, land is to be acquired from the Church of Latter-day Saints and 402 Birkby Road. 18 trees are to be removed within Area B to facilitate the development, of which 3 are considered to be Category A specimens. However, none of the trees are subject to a tree protection order or are within the Edgerton Conservation Area. The slide presents a composite image of the replacement planting in Area B. Replacement trees have been improved from initial conception with the inclusion of larger specimens, including lime and beech trees that will, in the fullness of time, provide effective replacement in terms of visual amenity. To ensure the replacement tree planting is able to become established, the footway adjacent the planting will be required to provide expansive underground root space systems, and this would be secured via condition. In respect of Area C at Prince Royd, the main interventions include removal of on-street parking for residents from Birchincliffe Road through to Birkby Road. This is to improve traffic flow. To replace the displaced parking, a dedicated on-street lay-by as well as a 24-space car park for residents is to be developed, inclusive of electric vehicle charging points. Improvements have also been made to the appearance of the car park from the initial submission, which include 3 street trees and the provision of dry stone walling to the front, sides and rear of the car park. As for Area D, the scheme is to provide a dedicated cycleway across the southern side of the junction, as well as a new 2-lane slip road onto the junction to total 4 exit lanes. Yellow lining is to be imposed across the Yew Tree Road junction to allow improved traffic flow and prevent jams backing onto the A629, which impedes flow and increases traffic collision risk. I'll just qualify what I said about exit lanes. I mean entry lanes onto Ainley Top roundabout. In respect of biodiversity, a new woodland is proposed across the southern flank of Ainley Top roundabout to improve the visual and ecological aspects of the proposal. Likewise, the scheme will provide in excess of a 15% biodiversity net gain than the status quo. The table on this slide highlights how this will be achieved, which is through the planting of in excess of 600 trees along the corridor as a result of the development. This is one of Phase 5 supplementary benefits in addition to the identified journey time savings and resultant economic benefits that they will bring. The following visuals highlight how Area D will be re-landscaped to provide an improved gateway appearance to Huddersfield. The visual on this slide represents how the dwelling of 123 Yew Tree Road will be replaced with tree and wildflower planting and revised stone boundary wall retaining walls to enable the extra exit lanes towards Ainley Top. This visual presents how the extra 2 exit lanes, footway, 2-way cycle path and woodland will appear once developed. Following the detailed breakdown of the individual components of the planning application across areas B, C and D, I will now move on to the rationale for the scheme coming forward. As previously stated, Phase 5 of the A629 programme is allocated in the Kirklees local plan. This is because the local plan, through its evidence-based and spatial strategy, identifies that the population of Kirklees will grow by around 50,000 people between 2013 and 2031. Sorry, apologies, I've had a cold this week, so my throat's a bit tickly, so just... Consequently, more housing and jobs are required to provide for this increased population, of which 6,000 houses are planned in Huddersfield alone, as well as 95 hectares of employment land allocated across Kirklees, 8 hectares of which is adjacent the A629 at Lindley Moor. The table on the slide presents how journey times will be impacted northbound between Huddersfield and Ainley Top should no highway capacity interventions on the network come forward to handle the greater number of journeys that are anticipated. You can see that the morning peak journey times increase by 2.5 minutes, whilst they also increase by 3.5 minutes in the afternoon peak. Though a few minutes does not, at face value, seem significant, when repeated across the tens of thousands of journeys conducted along and across the A629 on a daily basis, these are significant increases in journey times for commuters in both cars and buses that accumulate a significant negative economic effect. This slide presents the journey time savings made by the capacity improvements of phases 1A and 1B of the A629 programme. The interventions on this part of the corridor enable up to 5-minute time savings in the AM and PM peak periods in the northbound direction by 2036. The southbound interventions toward Huddersfield are more modest, albeit still important, with nearly a minute saved from the average journey time by 2036. This slide presents 3 tables. The top 2 tables set out the journey time savings proposed to be made through Phase 5 by 2038, cognizant of the increase in journey time delays set out in the bottom table repeated from the previous slide. The table, labelled number 22, presents that the greatest journey time savings will amount to around 2 minutes experienced northbound in the morning peak. The table, labelled number 23, presents that the greatest journey time savings southbound will amount to a half-minute saving by 2031, reducing slightly to 24 seconds by 2038. As members will have noted, the scenarios for Phase 5 present that time savings are loaded towards peak hours and northbound traffic flows. This is because, as found in the traffic data supporting the application, travel times and delays are presently higher northbound, and therefore potential time savings are more substantial. This is not something unique to Phase 5 and is evidenced in the information previously set out for Phases 1A and 1B. Without the Phase 5 scheme, the capacity improvements required for the local plan growth trajectory will be undermined and will potentially weaken the sustainability of development in Huddersfield and further afield. Likewise, The scheme improvements are a part of a wider cumulative package of improvements along the Huddersfield to Halifax corridor, and therefore the delay reductions identified in the modelling under this application should be viewed holistically alongside the improvements gained via the A629 programme's other phases. On the basis of the information presented here, as well as in the committee report and committee update, the proposal is recommended for approval in line with the list of conditions. The negative aspects of the scheme, including mature tree removal, are determined to be outweighed by the scheme's benefits in respect of highway capacity improvement, safety, and the promotion of sustainable forms of transport, alongside secondary benefits in respect of biodiversity net gains. Significant weight is afforded to the latter and minor impacts significant weight is afforded to the latter, and minor impacts are considered to be adequately mitigated through appropriately worded planning conditions. Thank you.
Right, we've got 3 speakers. First speaker is Heather Peacock. You've all got 3 minutes each.
Town to Ainley Top was supposed to save 1 minute. So I don't know, as it's such a small scheme, it'll just be seconds. Before I start, I'll just say that. Yesterday, I was preparing to hear you, you'll have to just go on behind me this. I was listening to Kirklees Council's Environment and Climate Change Scrutiny Panel from last week. Joe Robertson, from the Forestry Department, was speaking about the council trees and woodland. And I looked at the screen and my face was there. I thought, what's going on? And he'd got a picture of us outside the Black Road Junction protesting about the trees, the 87 trees to go there. And they're having to sort the policies out because there's so much people now have shifted over and they don't want trees cut down, and that's all over the country. That's Sheffield, Plymouth, and certainly here we've had several infrastructure campaigns to stop tree loss. And Joe said that there is local plan policies that stop such trees being taken out in planning, and we're just not using them. So I'd ask the committee to think about that. I know 87 trees have been saved, but how seconds on your journey to take 38 trees out, some are high amenity trees, it's going to totally change the area. I know they haven't got TPOs on, but that shouldn't matter. The whole area is going to change, and for several years it'll change. The new trees brought in will not have an effect straight away. So to me, the damage of the trees, the people who live there, who are going to be disrupted, even the traffic's going to be disrupted. The carbon even produced by the schemes is bad. We shouldn't be doing it. Now, when I thought this is like a scheme that's got 9 lives, is this, like a cat. And I came into council full meeting and I said to Will Simpson, who was the Council for Climate Emergency, even if it don't go ahead, can we still do the planting at Ainley Top? And he agreed to this. So the carbon saving is going to be there whether we do this scheme or not. So I'd ask the committee, it's an old-fashioned scheme. We need to be looking at bus journeys, active travel, which is not on this scheme. They've not really put a bus lane in to help traffic go through quickly on the bus. We need to be going on that route, not destroying a load of habitats, taking trees out. And even the tree officer wasn't happy with the mitigation, the planting that was going to go. We can always plant at Ainley Top, and that's a bonus in itself. We shouldn't be doing this. Car is not king. Cheers.
Got a copy of my presentation, which I'll give to the clerk afterwards. Okay, I'm here representing Cycle Kirklees, a campaign for everyday cycling, and I'm a member of the Huddersfield Unlimited Transport Group. I want to speak to our objection and to explain why we want to challenge the approval of Phase 5 without Phase 4. We believe that major road projects in England now need to demonstrate that they include active travel provision. As you've seen, the only provision for cycling in the application before you is at Ainley Top. From there, you may go over to Calderdale to see a whole travelling between Ainley Top and Huddersfield Town Centre, but this is not provided for in the plans. There is a lack of road space that precipitated the need for Phase 4 plan, with alternative routes in the neighbourhoods that border the main road. The Halifax Road is used for many local, shorter car journeys, so the original concept of improving quiet green routes for active travel was right in principle. It is clear now that these shorter journeys are prime targets for modal shift. They include trips that access shops and health facilities, education and childcare, local employment, leisure, etc. The biggest employment location for people who live in Huddersfield is Huddersfield. The most likely journeys to be undertaken on these alternative routes are not journeys between Huddersfield and Halifax, but between Huddersfield and Huddersfield. So there is scope for modal shift for many employment journeys too, but there is no proposal before you for dedicated cycling and walking routes, as they were part of Phase 4. Once established, such routes would give people a choice to walk and cycle for many local journeys, to relieve the A629 of traffic and to reduce demand for parking. So where are we after over 5 years of work on these alternatives? People and businesses in a number of high-density residential areas, mostly within 2 miles of the town centre, are interested parties. Phase 4 is paused. We had a poorly run top-down consultation starting over 5 years ago, and in a minority of locations, this resulted in vociferous opposition. By continuing with Phase 5 without addressing active travel is ignoring the changes that have occurred since 2016, when this whole programme started. With imaginative, committed community engagement, we know it is possible to establish schemes that facilitate modal shift for local journeys in urban areas with local support. Look at Salford, Leicester, Leeds for evidence of transformation of neighbourhoods. Kirklees Council appears to be happy to prioritise motor traffic over active modes. The so-called environmental benefits of increased traffic flow will induce more traffic and worsen air quality. One paragraph. Finally, it is not acceptable to build roads without providing improved facilities for walking and cycling and public transport that help to reduce our use of cars. We cannot support these latest Phase 5 proposals without an active plan for Phase 4 implementation. It is just a fig leaf made all the more tragic by climate emergency. Thank you, Chair.
Next is Andrew Moss.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm Andrew Moss. I'm the agent for the application, and I'm here to speak in support. There's a very detailed report before the committee. I will therefore keep my presentation short. As set out in the report, the need for the scheme was identified during the preparation of the Kirklees local plan to mitigate the transport impacts of the local plan. This scheme seeks to deliver needed strategic infrastructure identified in the local plan and would deliver a range of benefits. Overall, as set out in paragraph 10.56 of the report, the proposed development complies with transport policies within the local plan, and this is to be attributed significant weight in its determination. Turning to detailed design, the application is supported by a wide range of plans and other documentation addressing the many issues which arise and which are assessed in detail in the report before the committee. I would note that during the course of the application period, there have been ongoing discussions with officers, and as a result of these, a number of further changes have been made to the detailed design proposals. Additionally, there have been ongoing discussions in relation to conditions which would retain control over the development to the authority. A summary list is set out in section 12 of the report. I note the recommendation is to delegate the approval of the application and the issuing of a decision notice to the Head of Planning and Development in order to enable the completion of the list of conditions, including those contained within the report. The applicant supports this approach, and I would envisage, if the committee was to resolve to follow this recommendation, that there be further discussions between the applicant and officers prior to the determination of the application with the full list of agreed conditions. I do acknowledge that the development will entail some negatives, as is the case with many, if not all, developments. That said, the scheme is needed, is acceptable in principle, and the scheme before the committee is the optimum solution. I therefore commend the statement in paragraph 11.2 of the report that the negative aspects of the scheme are outweighed by the scheme's benefits. Conscious of time, I will conclude there by asking the committee to resolve to follow the recommendation as set out in the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Chris, do you want to come in on any points about cycling and bus lanes?
Yeah, well, we can do, yeah. I mean, to some extent, this particular scheme has limited improvements for cycling. I think that's acknowledged, but I think the full corridor scheme, the Halifax to Huddersfield scheme, does include a separate phase, phase 4, which specifically looks at improving cycling provision and on two routes parallel to the A629 Halifax Road. As the speaker said, unfortunately that is halted at the moment from a funding perspective, but they have started on a scheme that won't be able to deliver until that funding becomes available, unfortunately. I think buses, that is roughly a 10-minute bus route is the A629. Currently, the unpredictability and unreliability of that service is partly because of congestion on the A629. The buses are held in the queues. The scheme should improve journey times, reliability, which will affect the bus provision itself, making journeys more reliable. It wasn't felt there was sufficient space on the 629 corridor to build in dedicated bus lanes without further losing trees and widening. Additional land would have been required to do that road allocation. So the compromise between the two is that by improving flows on the corridor itself, in doing that you actually improve bus times as well.
I think I'd just come in and just repeat a paragraph from the committee report, if that's okay with you, Chair, on sustainable travel. So paragraph 10.52 of the committee report states that in responding to the requirements of policy LP20, the scheme provides benefits for sustainable modes of transport, namely pedestrians, cyclists and bus users. Significant footway width and signalised pedestrian crossing enhancements across areas B, C and D will serve to make journeys by foot safer, whilst the removal of parked cars and the increased length of approach and turn lanes at key points along the A629 will improve bus journey times by preventing potential choke and conflict points. Again, these latter interventions will also serve to improve pedestrian vehicular safety by allowing for better visibility across the highway network. It's admitted that cycle improvements are limited to Area D under this proposal. However, the segregated cycle lanes at the southern side of Ainley Top that are proposed are safer to use for cyclists than the currently existing shared surfaces at one of the busiest parts of the highway network. Similarly, significant cycle improvements are planned under Phase 4. That scheme hasn't been removed, it's simply paused. So, again, within the remit of planning, the local planning authority can't compel that scheme to come forward, but obviously there has been plans put in place for that scheme. And there are slides if members would like to have a look at where the notional routes are, which have been worked up to a certain level. So if that is of interest. Thanks.
Members, it's over to you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions I have. First of all, using that route on a regular basis, have we looked at any alleviation in the backup of traffic on the M62 coming off at Ainley Top? The other thing is the total cost. You mentioned that funding was coming in from a central pot. Is it from Wyker? Is it all coming? The question is it all coming from there, or are Kirklees contributing anything? And if so, what is it? And then the other question is, in the experts' opinion, what are the top 2 or 3 benefits to residents using the road or residents in the local area? Thank you.
So in terms of the M62, that's the remit of National Highways, so the council would work in terms of the A629 and how that is a tributary of the M62, but any works for the M62 would be the responsibility of National Highways. In terms of funding, obviously I'll stress that that's not a material planning consideration, which I stated in the presentation, but from as far aware as planning are, it's funded by WICA, as you fully funded by WICA. In terms of the third question, there was a third query, I think. Top 2 or 3 benefits that you think yeah, so obviously I think I've pointed to the northbound time savings to Halifax. Obviously there's potentially a lot of people who live in Edgerton and Linley who potentially work or transit via the A629 towards the M62 corridor. Obviously journey time savings will be of significant benefit to them. There will also be local people that will be using buses and or walk on the pavements to local centres across that area. So obviously it's a full upgrade of that corridor in those areas that was presented before committee. So obviously they'll benefit from that, as well as the residents in terms of Area C will obviously be getting off-street parking too with electric vehicle charging points. So there's a number of benefits there, but I could list more. But
Yes, thank you, Chairman. In the past, I've criticised local plan development on the grounds that we don't have the infrastructure, so it would be hypocritical of me to oppose this scheme on principle, and to that extent, certainly I welcome it. We do need to improve the road network. What I do notice, doesn't seem to be noted in the committee report, but this is also a major route to and from Halifax Hospital. And we have patients going either way and visitors going either way. So it also involves a broader section of the community. What I think is it would be intolerable to have major and contemporaneous roadworks in Lindley, what I call Ellen Bottom, the part between the Ellen Bypass and Salterhevel, and Salterhevel Hill itself. We have major roadworks that seem to have been there forever. They've been there for several years, approaching Salterhevel Hill and going up Salterhevel Hill. So what I would like is very close cooperation between Kirklees, Calderdale, and as necessary, Highways England and WICA. I think we need to make sure that we don't have 3, 4, 5 sets of roadworks at the same time. It would make that journey very close to impossible. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Chair. I'd like to start off with a number of questions, which reading through the report, I just wasn't sure how they were arrived at. Paragraph 10.1, you talk about conflict with the development plan, and I know the conclusion in the end is that it doesn't conflict with the development plan, but I just wonder whether you can share with us how that was answered, because there is a potential for conflict with the development plan. I can see that. The second point is in paragraph 10.4. I was astounded by this figure that the aim is to improve the end-to-end journey time for buses by 50%. I find that so large as to be unbelievable. I assume when it says end-to-end, it means from Huddersfield to Halifax. I think that's on the face of it, that seems impossible. But I'd just like to know where that figure has come from. And then when I was looking at paragraph 1044, there are two tables there. Sorry, 1044. And I don't know what your answer will be to this, but are these figures good enough? Now, I suppose that's a matter of opinion, but looking at what, you know, remembering what I read in the report, I can't help thinking that actually these figures are not good enough, and don't do enough, even over the long period, to deal with A, growth from the development plan, and B, therefore growth in traffic, and so on. And finally, a comment to do with trees. Now, I've gone on about trees on numerous occasions in the past, and I note that 600 trees are to be planted in Area D. I'm more particularly concerned about the management of these trees. It's a fine thing to plant trees. What you often find is that some of these don't take, and so on. But I would like to see management of those trees, because that's quite a large expanse of woodland. Management of those trees that is, as far as possible, done by self-regeneration of the trees, because that lots of research has been done to show that gives much healthier plants and a more sustainable woodland. So I suppose I'm asking for a strengthening of the condition that deals with that. But I do think that's important, because it's a very easy thing to say we planted millions and millions of trees, but what if half of them die or don't regenerate at all? That's not very helpful, in my opinion. I'm not an arboriculturalist, but I have opinions. So thank you, Chair.
Right, I'll try and come back across all four of those. In terms of the point on the development plan, it is allocated within the development plan as a strategic highway intervention to deal with the capacity which Councillor Armour identified. In terms of it being in conflict with the development plan, I don't think it can, because it's serving the economic objectives and the allocations therein for the development plan. In terms of 50% reduction in bus journeys, I think at that point in the committee report, it's talking about the preliminary options that are being identified to deliver, and that's an objective at the very early stage. It's not necessarily the output of all of the options decided upon to provide the highway interventions. So when they look at providing a highway scheme, they'll look at various options. They could put a motorway in, that's one option, but there's various feasibility issues with that. But then when they discount the so they had an aim for the 50% bus journeys, and then obviously it's not able to be delivered because various options are discounted to achieve that aim, but they might achieve a percentage of it. In terms of the figures on journey times, in respect of whether they're good enough or not, I'll probably bring Chris in on that in a second, but obviously I think in the committee report and in the presentation it's evidence that those journey times are on the basis of significantly increased journey numbers on the network that will increase journey time significantly for commuters and those using buses. So obviously 2 minutes also needs to be seen in the context of the other savings within phases 1A and 1B, and also cumulatively in terms of the whole corridor and the improvements that are being made there, as well as journeys that are coming across the network too. In terms of the biodiversity management condition, it's a very lengthy condition we attach. It's got, I'll read points out to you. I've got it in front of me now. I can share it with you after the committee as well, Councillor Pinnock. It's got description and evaluation of features to be managed and enhanced, extent and location of areas of proposed enhancement works on appropriate scale maps and plans, ecological trends and constraints on site that might influence management, aims and objectives of the management, appropriate management actions for achieving aims and objectives, an annual work programme to cover an initial 5-year period capable of being rolled forward for a period of 30 years, details of the management body or organisation responsible for implementation of the management plan, ongoing monitoring programme. Yeah, so there's obviously, it's a very detailed condition that is robust and obviously will then be discharged via a condition, and that condition is pre-commencement itself as well, so we require that.
Sorry, can I just come back on that one? Because it's something I feel quite strongly about.
Sure.
Could it just be checked that what I've mentioned is part of the remit that people would look at in order to say whether that condition has been discharged or not? Because I think that what I'm looking at is natural regeneration of woodland rather than having to manage it all the time.
I think that area in south of Ainley Top is currently a paddock, and I think there are sometimes grazing animals there, I'm not sure which. But so therefore that precludes woodland generating naturally when you have grazing animals on it, so they would need to plant whips. I think there's a mix of standard trees being planted, but then they will have whips, and then obviously they'll have management where they'll remove the protection that prevents, say, vermin eating the saplings and things like this. So that's typically what you see in those management plans, and then anything that's replaced, or anything that dies will be replaced within that initial 5-year period as well. So that's typically what you see.
Moan.
Maybe I answered it, okay.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Chair, I think personally, I feel it's very sad to see the removal of Area A from the scheme, which was supported by the Greenhead councillor and majority of the local residents that time on the original scheme. I feel very sorry to feel that. Now my concern is, when this scheme will be completed, the faster moving the junction with Blacker Road and Edgerton, because there will be no improvement on the area. That's my main concern. Chair, but however, I welcome the revised scheme. As I see, this will improve the area, yeah, between B and D, especially between B and C, which is traffic is blocking everywhere. The big lorries coming opposite way. So I'm happy with that. But my concern is, because there will be the parking on road parking will be removed, yeah? So are there any facility for disabled people who can't walk from a certain distance? I don't know. There is any, it doesn't say anything on. I think it should be some facility for disabled people. In the end, can I ask officer if they look, I know they have taken off from this main scheme, if they look into to improve the junction of Blacker Road and Edgerton to take the pressure from heavy moving from the other side. Thank you.
Yeah. Currently, obviously, Area A has been removed from the scheme due to really the level of public objection to it. There's currently no plans to do anything, any further improvements at that junction. Whether that situation would change if that junction, if the scheme was implemented and that junction started to become an issue, I suppose it would have to be revisited depending on the scale of the delay that it caused. But currently there's no proposals to look at that junction, no, because it's been removed from the scheme. The parking issue you mentioned, the parking spaces in the car park that's been proposed will be, some of those will be for disabled, a percentage of those will be disabled places. They're all going to be electric. They all have EV charging points. So there's nothing specifically, if you lived in one of those properties on Halifax Road that is being disabled, there would be a disabled space available in the car park itself, but you would probably be relying on being dropped off, not outside, the one outside your house, no, you would have to be dropped off, or if you, I mean, it's not too far, and it is on the flat with footways between the car park and those properties, so hopefully you could negotiate that. If I just, I did have just a couple of points I'd like to make on some of Councillor Pinnock's issues that he made about the sort of the journey savings, and I think as Richard said in his presentation, the sort of headline savings are, they're obviously northbound because that's where most of the congestion occurs, and in the peak periods on the northbound carriageway. And I think we've got 1.5 minutes in 2031 and two minutes in 2038. And you can say, are those significant enough? I think they've got to be taken in the whole with the whole corridor scheme, not just those in isolation. You might say that you don't think they're significant. I think given the numbers of vehicles, that they are fairly significant savings. But I think you've also got to consider if you didn't do anything, those journey times would be increasing by 2.5 and 3.5 minutes. So doing nothing would make, it's the difference between we're improving it by 2 minutes, but it's going to get 3.5 minutes worse if we do nothing. Suddenly it becomes a bigger saving. I think the other thing that we need to possibly being overlooked is that we're achieving those savings while still predicting an increased flow. We're improving the efficiency of that corridor while still increasing the flows on there. And looking at the predicted flows for 2038, some sections of that corridor could have increases up to 20% in traffic, the ones nearest the motorway. So I think it's got to be taken in the round of doing nothing will get worse. We are getting an improvement, but we're not only getting an improvement, we're getting an improvement and accommodating growth within that corridor that will be generated, or it's estimated will be generated from local plan growth. So I think it's that might seem a small, taken as just as a figure, it might seem small, but you've got to take it in the round with all the other things. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Various comments, but can I just start with a question? I thought, well, I haven't heard that this scheme is unpaused. Like stage 4 is you've mentioned is still paused. Is stage 5 still paused?
I didn't know stage 5. As far as I'm aware, stage 5 is not paused. And should it get planning permission, it will probably be starting next year, as far as I know.
No, I always understood that the A629 from Ainley top down was paused, but anyway, I'll leave that there. My other comments, I'm afraid, are all about Section 4, Section A rather, which I know are really not material to this particular application. On the whole, I mean, this application, I am quite happy to see it here and to approve it when we get to that point. But I am concerned about 4 being why do I keep calling it 4? Area A being taken out of the scheme because there are so many implications, as Moan has already said about that. Regardless of forgetting the trees issue, which we know has been contentious, but there's a lot of issues, I think, around road safety at that junction. I know that over the last 5 years, figures have been given over the last 5 years, but prior to that, there have been deaths at that junction, at Blacker Road Junction, and a lot of near misses, or not near misses, but accidents are not reported because of the very poor sight lines on that junction. As you're coming up from Blacker Road, it's very easy to get hit by something going down the A629. I've seen that many a time. Also, since this whole scheme was brought into being, I mean, the Bramble School has been built, And as ward councillors, we do get an awful lot of requests. Why can't we have a pedestrian crossing with lights outside of or very near to Brambles? And it was always assumed again that that might be considered as part of the original scheme. Air quality that's the other. I mean, one of the reasons for having Junction A in there was about air quality. It's an air quality action zone. And I do note in the update, the environmental health comments about that. And I do hope that their condition is added to this report in full, because I think it's really important that we do understand what happens to air quality, because that, as far as I was concerned, I mean, it's a very, it's one of the major issues about the whole of that junction was the very, very poor air quality at that junction, and that needed to be, and still needs to be, improved. Lighting, that's not really been, again, I know this is something that can come back later, hopefully, from highways will look at this. But again, we've had lots of queries about lighting, especially under the tree cover, that it is very dangerous along the A629 at night because the lighting is so poor. And we were always assured that the lighting would be looked at and improved, though I think possibly the LED lights that have now been put in have helped, but that's something else that still needs to be considered, I think. The right-hand turns, as you're coming down from Ainley Top towards town, they are so dangerous, particularly at the moment, but I mean, hopefully, certainly under this bit of the scheme, they will be dealt with, but that still needs to, that leads the bottom half of the road, that they still need to look at the right hand, that those need to be looked at there in terms of safety aspects. And also, again, what the original application or the original scheme was to not allow a right-hand turn at the Blacker Road junction. And we were quite vociferous about that because we, as ward councillors, because we said that that would mean that more traffic will be forced through the smaller roads between the A629 and the A640, which are very small residential roads, and the A640 is already so congested as it goes through Marsh. It's ridiculous. But those are all my concerns about taking Junction A out. So I do hope that when this will all be considered at a later date. Just a couple of other comments, I suppose. I do think the congestion there now is as bad as it was before the pandemic along that whole stretch of road, if not certainly getting worse. I use it quite frequently, and I've seen it getting worse. So it's the congestion that is a big issue, and that, to perhaps answer Councillor Thompson's point, is one of the benefits of this scheme from the local residents, because for local residents, in as far as if there is better flow along that road, then perhaps the smaller roads in between A629 and A640 won't be used so much. So that would be a benefit. And I also believe there's meant to be a benefit from traffic coming off the M62 as well, for a better flow round Ainley Top roundabout, which should reduce that queue coming off the M62. And I do hope, because we were promised that there was going to be a specific bus route from Huddersfield via HRI to Calderdale, to the infirmary there. And I do hope that will still be part of, I mean, it's obviously not highways, but I do hope that will still happen. And I think that's about all of my comments. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Well, I think I've been jotting down your points, Councillor Patterson. I think, unfortunately, most of the points you've been making are about the things that have been taken out of the scheme rather than things that are in it. So, you know, obviously, area A has been taken out, and that was really, as I said earlier, due to the significant number of objections towards the scheme. I mean, I'm sure that as a highway authority, we would have preferred to keep it in from a certainly highway, the efficiency of the corridor perspective, but planning's a balancing act, and it's obviously weighed in favour of the trees in this particular instance. The lighting, certainly the areas that are being improved the lighting will all be replaced up to modern day standards. That doesn't include, to the best of my knowledge, the rest of the A629 corridor. The right turn issue, the right turns you're referring to, and I think this is, I've seen this in some of the documentation I've been reading, when it was in option stages, was about banning right turns at Blacker Road, etc., etc. That wasn't proposed to be banned because it was thought it would increase the right turns higher up onto the other roads to get across to the hospital and those sort of areas. So they have been kept in. And I use that route pretty much every day commuting to work. It is one of the primary routes in the town centre. Currently, to me, those right turns don't seem to cause the smaller right turns don't seem to cause an issue to flow. There's usually sufficient, unless it's a large vehicle, there's sufficient width for not to interrupt flow for right turning vehicles. I think that's covered the points you made.
Just another comment on the scheme as a whole. What I'm concerned about, looking at the scheme, it doesn't seem to be enough, meaning that the scheme itself doesn't seem to cover enough statistics as far as time saving and potential air quality, etc. And I can only think back to a scheme that went on in Birkenshaw, as far as the Birkenshaw roundabout, where it was supposed to alleviate the traffic and keep the traffic flow to drop down the emissions, which is one of the top black spots as far as pollution's concerned in the borough. But after the scheme, it actually made it worse. So the traffic has piled up more, the traffic is slower and stood still more. And this scheme almost smacks of that, where it seems to be a interim solution with no long-term view on the impact that it needs to have to alleviate traffic. It just seems a very quick fix as far as putting right-hand turns in, cutting little bits of corners off it. It doesn't really seem to hit the main issue as far as the flow of traffic to and from Ainley Top into Huddersfield, I'm afraid. And on those views, I won't be supporting it. Thank you, Chair.
Throw some excitement into room.
I doubt I can do that, Chair. It's a traffic scheme. However, thank you for your comments, members. We've listened intently to the issues that you've thrown at us, and officers have addressed those in a very comprehensive way. I would say, but I would say that, wouldn't I? I think one of the key elements is, as we have mentioned before, is about the wider context of the scheme, and not just focusing on the benefits or the negatives of this particular part of the network improvements. So as a whole, and as we have said before about the growth of the local plan and the growth of the borough that supports obviously employment and jobs and housing and the development that we aspire to create through the Kirklees economic plan as well. And this, as Richard had said, is part of the local plan to alleviate some of that. So I think those elements are key to your thinking. to your thoughts about how you're going to vote. So I'm just going to leave it there. Thank you for your comments, and I think we'll go to vote, Chair. I think I've seen another councillor put their hand up.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I mean, I'm happy to move this, but as I said before, as long as the condition that environmental health are asking for be added to the conditions at the end. I presume that's acceptable?
Yeah, in the committee update, it was listed as 21, which follows on from the 20 listed in the committee report, so it would be included, yeah.
What have you. So, it's been moved by Councillor Pattison, seconded by myself. We'll go to a vote.
To vote then on the officer's recommendation, Councillor Sokol,
For.
Councillor Pattison,
For.
Councillor Cook,
For.
Councillor Pinnock,
For.
Councillor Armour,
For.
Councillor Thompson,
Against?
Councillor Hall.
For.
So that's carried. Thank you.
Colleagues, thank you for your attendance today. That's it. See you in, might be December.